So, hello everyone, and welcome back after lunch. I hope you've had been some really interesting talks this morning, and I'm really pleased to be chairing this session for you right now. My name is Amit Kulkarni, and I work in the research team at the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists, and so I'm really pleased to be chairing this session on intervention design. We've got three fantastic presentations being delivered by four speakers today. Um, we are quite tight for time within this session, so there won't be an opportunity for a live Q&A at the end, but please do use the chat function to leave your comments, the Q&A to leave questions for our speakers, which they can look to after the presentation. And also please do leave feedback and comments. I think people have invested a lot in this work and are really interested to hear what people are thinking about it. So without further ado, I'm going to go straight into our first talk, which will be delivered by Ben Bolton Grant and entitled Reconstruction in Action, Exploring Mechanisms of Change in the Talking Out Residential, a Stammering Affirming Residential Intervention. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Amit. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be here. As Amit says, my name is Ben Bolton Grant, and I am delighted to talk today about some work I've been doing as part of my PhD studies at Leeds Beckett University, supervised very brilliantly by Dr. Sarah James, Trish Holsh, and Amanda Heinen. So before we get into the nitty-gritty about what's going on, I think it's important just to talk a little bit about where I sit and my positionality with this research. So we're talking about the Talking Out Residential, which is run by Talking Out Limited, which is a not-for-profit speech and language therapy practice. And I'm a director of that practice. But before that was in existence, the residential was already running, and I've been involved with it since about 2014. So I'm researching my own practice, and therefore that's the way I kind of understand it and kind of construct meaning along with my participants is going to be affected by my place there. My day job is that I work at Leeds Beckett University as a lecturer and a course director, so I'm in a really privileged position of being supported by my employer to complete my PhD studies, which is a slightly double-edged sword because it means I can either be a good employee or a good PhD student, but not necessarily both at the same time. And then my relationship with stammering. So I don't stammer. I've worked with people who stammer for a long time. I've been a speech and language therapist for nearly 20 years, and a good chunk of that has been working in stammering. I don't stammer, but I think my role really is to be a bit of a kind of a receptacle for the stories of people who do stammer. But their experiences are not ones that I can understand because I've not trodden that path myself. So on to the residential, very briefly, just setting the scene about what it is. So it's a 5-day long residential programme where we take a group of young people who stammer from all across the UK, ages 11 to 18 years old, all of whom are in secondary school age. We are fully funded by Action for Stammering Children, which means that there's no cost to families or to SLT services for that. And we have a 5-day residential week adopting a stammering affirming stance, mixing outdoor activities that you might expect to see in a school residential programme, speech and language therapy activities, whilst we're living together and kind of sharing the entirety of our day. You know, we see each other first thing in the morning for breakfast, and we're right there until bedtime all together. And why did we do this? What was kind of the rationale of when it was set up, which was long before I became involved. It was set up by a group of speech and language therapists from the Yorkshire and Humber SIG, as it was at the time, now the SEN for stammering. And it was a recognising that there's something about that real life lived experience where we're combining these different elements that leads to the change that we are hoping to see. But we don't have the data. Yes, so well, now we do have the data, but we haven't had anything published previously to support that that's what's happening on. So this is what my PhD is looking at. And I have two studies going on, one of which is quantitative, which is looking at what is the impact of attending the residential on the experiences of stammering that our young people have. And that's done through self-report measures. And then the second part, which is what we're focusing on today, is a qualitative study trying to untangle the mechanisms of change involved with this, because we have quite a lot of different moving parts in this intervention, and it's trying to understand how those work together to lead to a change in the way that our clients experience stammering and view themselves as somebody who stammers. So to do that, I have used grounded theory as an approach, which uses a concurrent data collection and analysis process, which is slightly different to some other qualitative approaches. And what that means is that as I've been going along, I've been analysing the data, and that has refined the next stage of data collection. So the questions that I'm asking and the way I'm thinking has changed all the way through, and that's been informed by the data and what my participants have been telling me as we've gone along. My top participants were a group of young people who had been on the residential and their parents, and I spoke to them separately, and the staff involved with it as well. So speech and language therapist, an outdoor instructor, and one of our pastoral staff who was there to look after everybody, including me, during the week. And then the data that kind of generated is mostly kind of conversation-based data. So focus groups with the young people and with the parents, interviews with the staff, some individual interviews with young people as well, using picture elicitation, so photographs that we've taken during the intervention itself, as well as pictures that the young people have created themselves to represent what their experiences were like. And then field notes that I collected, or I generated during a week, where I was often found in a corner talking to my phone and leaving myself a voice note about what was happening at a particular time. And through kind of boiling that down and sifting through it and going back and refining it as we go along, that's then given us a model to represent the change process that is happening here. And I recognize that you won't be able to read what's on the screen at the moment because the writing's really little. So I'm going to go through and give the headlines for each of these stages as we go through. But the essence of the model is at the heart of what's going on here is a reconstruction of an identity shift for our clients around the way they view themselves as somebody who stammered. It's a multi-layered model, so it's kind of dynamic and it's non-linear. So this is a cumulative process through repeated real-life experiences that allow our clients to experience the different things represented in the model here over and over and over again, and therefore build up a layer of change which starts off thinking about some very external conditions and moves increasingly internal to the client in more of an abstract way, to the point where they have started to view themselves in a different way. And as I was writing about that, I was trying to think of a way to kind of can conceptualize it and help myself understand it more than anything, really, and came to the idea that it's a bit like a chemical reaction that's happening here. And my knowledge of chemistry is woeful, so if there are any people with a chemistry background in the audience, please forgive what I'm about to say. But my very basic understanding of chemistry is that you start off with some sort of vessel or container that you are going to add things into, where your reaction is going to take place. There needs to be some sort of holding space for that to happen. Into that go the ingredients that you need to create the change that's going to happen. And then we have some sort of catalyst effect where there's a spark that gets the change going and kind of kicks things off. Following that, there's a period of transformation where the change is actively happening while something is reacting with something else to cause a change, which then leaves us with a product at the end. And the product is something that can often be taken out of the container that it was originally put into, or it might expand out of it in itself. I keep thinking about videos that sometimes pop up on social media of chemistry teachers trying to infuse teenagers into chemistry, and they'll pour two things into a beaker and suddenly it explodes and foam's stuck all over the ceiling. And I think that's a bit what's happening here with the residential, that we go through that change process, but the product that we end up with at the end not only gets removed from the container that we've created and sent back out into the world, but it becomes bigger than it. It expands to the point where it kind of bursts out of that space that we've created. So let's think about each of these layers, and apologies that I'm going to go very quickly through it, but I'm very mindful of time. So if we think about that first layer then, which is our environment, and this is what our staff team are creating from the very beginning. So we're thinking about a stammering affirming environment where stammering is not only welcomed, but normalized, expected, and celebrated. We're removing barriers and very actively working to remove barriers that our participants might arrive with. And that's to do with stammering or to do with the fact that you're a teenager and you've been shipped off to a residential with people that you've never met before. I would have barricaded myself in my bedroom rather than do that when I was 15 years old. So they are amazing, but they might come with things that mean that it's going to be difficult to engage. So our team are working to remove those to make it feel safe to engage. And that involves it being a judgment-free space, again, to do with stammering, but also in the more general term as well. And we then get this safe space, and that safety is both in terms of psychological safety, that I feel okay to be vulnerable, I feel okay to be somebody who stammers, I feel okay to be away from home, and that I've got people that are looking after me. But also a physically safe space as well. We're asking our clients to do some physically challenging and scary things, and things that are genuinely dangerous, and therefore you need to know that you are safe as well. And that's true for the parents of our clients. They need to have that safety, and know that that safety is in place. And then into that environment go our ingredients. So these are the things that you could probably point to on a timetable or a plan of the week. And again, they're very specifically planned and created by our staff team working on the residential. So we're creating a community, and that involves the staff very, very closely in there as well, and developing a new sort of relationship as speech and language therapist and client that we might not see happening in a more traditionally therapeutic setting, where we're equalizing power. And that's part of the fact that the staff are there doing the activities alongside the young people. They are standing at the top of something big and scary and having a little wobbly moment, and being vulnerable and sharing that. And that helps kind of equalize that power dynamic. Within the group, we have teamwork activities, where we're purposefully putting those in to build community, as well as having kind of the shared downtime, the incidental time together, because we're living together for a week. So we are, the group is sharing sleeping accommodation in the dormitories, where we're all eating meals together. We're sat on a minibus together in between sessions, and just have lots of time just to genuinely get to know the people you're with and connect with them. And we create a parent community alongside that through some online work that we do. We then think about adding in specific challenges and activities. So we have a set of non-speaking related challenges, and these are some very obvious challenges around outdoor activities of things like climbing and mountain biking, canoeing, gill scrambling, the things that you might expect to see on an outdoor residential week. But recognizing that just being there is a challenge in itself, kind of managing homesickness, being away from home, eating food that you don't normally eat, potentially, dealing with a bit different bedtime routine. All of those things are moments of challenge and a chance for our clients to engage in doing something that feels difficult that might otherwise be avoided. And one of my participants, a very, very wise young lady, talked about the fact that this acts as a metaphor for stammering, that by doing these things, you can understand stammering in maybe a slightly different way. We have some speaking challenges, recognizing that speaking in itself is scary and it is viewed as a risk, particularly for young people who stammer. So we have some very overt moments of speaking challenge built into it around public speaking, presentations, things like that. And we mix that up in terms of whether it's an individual or a group challenge, and the different type of audience and the size of the audience that might be involved there. And then our final ingredient into this mix is our therapeutic ideas or concepts. So within our therapy sessions, we introduce specific models to help understand how we approach challenge, how to understand thoughts and feelings associated with that, how to approach a hierarchy for challenge. And this gives us some kind of conceptual anchors that we can use to hang the rest of the week off, both in terms of the non-speaking related stuff and speaking related challenges. And that gives us a shared vocabulary to help us normalize and make some kind of more objective conversations happen around doing some of those scary things. But of course, those things don't happen in isolation. So this combination of these factors with the real life lived experience gives us our third layer of the model, which is our catalyst of really sparking change. So this is a layer of social meaning making, a social process. By doing these things all together, our clients start to experience shared challenges and shared successes, which pave the way for some later kind of more internal changes. We're sharing stammering as well as part of that, talking about stammering, being very overt and sharing what stammering feels like and having that moment of connection and recognition with that. And then we have some more kind of subtle, maybe slightly more inherent experiences that our clients have through spontaneously engaging in the communication around this situation. You've got to talk when you're doing an outdoor activity, but you're not tending to be thinking about it. You're tending to think about, oh my God, I'm doing something really scary here. And that leads to lots of inherent talking where our clients are talking without thinking about stammering, without guarding themselves and removing some of those barriers that might have been there, which is potentially a really different experience to most of the rest of their lives. And that includes stammering openly, allowing yourself to stammer without checking it and hearing other people do that as well. So really reinforcing that stammering, affirming space where stammering is normal, accepted and welcomed. And then from those meaning makings, we get to our transformation stage where things are really starting to shift. And it's getting closer into the middle of the model and therefore increasingly difficult to read. So we have these internal states of feeling of belonging, of people who have found their tribe, who feel seen and recognized and normal as somebody who stammers. A sense of mastery that I can do these things, I can do the scary things, and maybe that's quite a different narrative to the way that our group have arrived. And that's both related to non-stammering and stammering related things, but particularly I can do this and it's okay. I can stand up in front of a group, I can stammer and the world doesn't end. And actually I'm okay with that. Some validation around identity, that actually I'm okay as I am, thank you, that my experiences are valid. And they're okay even if they've been challenging. But that is different to who I am as a person. That doesn't define me. And then a real sense of empowerment, of kind of action, that I can go and do this. I can move this forward and take this with me out of the vessel or the container that I've thought that we've been holding this in so far. Which there, oh, sorry, I've skipped too many slides. But as I said at the beginning, that doesn't happen as a one-off process, and it's not linear. We kind of construct, or our clients are constructing this meaning in different ways, depending on how they engage with the different activities and what they take from each of their experiences. So we have this ongoing process. So we get this iterative building, cumulative effect, where we preload with information, and that might be a therapeutic model. It might be a way to kind of help conceptualize what's happening and what we're experiencing, or it might be some real nuts and bolts logistical information about, you need your wellies on today. This is what the activity is going to look like. This is what you can do if you feel very kind of confident with it. And this is what you can do if you're feeling more challenged with it. So they're given lots of information to support them to engage. They then have to go and do it and have a real life experience. And the key to that is that's a real life experience with a therapeutic team of people around you to be able to help you engage with that. And then afterwards reflect on it. And that might be informal reflection, kind of in the moment of how did that feel, what was going on, a conversation between you and somebody in the minibus on the way back to the centre, or it might be much more structured, timetabled reflection where we're incorporating that into a therapy session built in to it, which then in itself, that reflection feeds forward into the preloading. That becomes information you're taking with you into the next opportunity you have. And so we've got that ongoing kind of plan, do, review sort of cycle that I think probably most of us are familiar with already. And then we get to the point of reconstruction. So this is this fundamental shift that we see by the end of the week with young people feeling happier, more confident, more accepting of themselves as somebody who stammers. And that's something that parents are noticing as well when they get back. And that then leads us to a change in behavior, that kind of the idea that this product has grown beyond the container, that we see a change in behavior at the end. So when we go back into the real world afterwards, our clients are participating more, they're engaging more with education, they're engaging more socially in the stories that my participants have talked about. What's happened to them since the residential has really kind of crystallized that there is a tangible change, both in identity, but also in how that then gets presented to the world outside. So to summarize very quickly within my last 30 seconds, what we are providing with the residential is a stammering affirming environment that gives a really intense, repeated real life experience in a way that a more traditional therapeutic approach might not be able to provide. And it gives the reflection, the tools for engagement and reflection to support that change process, which leads to this fundamental shift in identity and then participation. Thank you very much. I'm aware I need to stop talking immediately because I'm on 17 minutes, but if you would like to reach out to me through the very clever online platform, please do, or my contact details are here to reach out in other ways. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was fantastic to hear that sort of detailed and subtle and reflective analysis of that intervention. And I think a real lesson for all of us with the clinical services we deliver to really carefully evaluate the things that we're doing and better understand them and give us opportunities to develop. I'm going to move on now to our next presenters, who are Vicky Joffe and Catherine Farrow, who are going to tell us about their project developing a framework of support for adults with DLD, the co-production, prioritization elements, and the progression across it.
Thanks so much, Amit. Hello, and thank you for joining our presentation today. We're so delighted you've chosen to come to hear about the work we're currently doing with young adults with developmental language disorder. So just to start, please let us introduce ourselves. So I'm Catherine Farrow, I work closely with Professor Vicky Joffe at the Health, Wellbeing and Care Hub at the University of Essex. I'm Senior Clinical Lead here and a speech and language therapist by background. Vicky's our Dean of Integrated Health and Care Partnerships and Professor in Speech and Language Therapy. So Vicky will be presenting the second half of this talk. And Dr. Seville Savi-Carriol, lecturer in the School of Health and Social Care at the University of Essex, is also part of the research team, but not presenting today. So welcome. We're going to present to you today a framework of support for adults with developmental language disorder, or DLD, which has been co-produced with a group of young people who have lived experience of language disorder and the challenges it presents. So this next slide details some key facts about DLD. Research has highlighted that it affects approximately 7% of 5-year-olds in the UK. And Norbury also found that around 10% of all children in the UK have language disorder overall. And further research has found similar prevalence figures across the world. We've heard a lot about health inequalities, haven't we, over the last 2 days? And we know that in areas of social deprivation, the prevalence of DLD increases and can be above 50% in primary years and between 70 and 80% in secondary schools. So how does DLD present itself in children and young people? So children with DLD may present with difficulties in the understanding and expression of phonology, syntax, grammar, semantics, vocabulary, and pragmatics, and also executive functioning. And what's especially important to note is that DLD is a lifelong condition, continuing throughout childhood, adolescence, and then into adulthood, affecting educational attainment, social inclusion, employment, quality of life, and health and well-being. We know its impact on the individual can be significant. So the aim of our research has been to explore the views of young people with DLD, their parents, specialist teachers, and speech and language therapists, with the purpose of co-producing a framework of support for young adults with DLD. We used focus groups and interviews to explore several discussion points, which included the identification of language disorder and support that's been offered, experiences of the young people at school, college, and in the workplace, and challenges they and their families are experiencing, and the type of support and input that they feel is needed. So this information has enabled us to co-produce a framework of support which will enable us to co-design a meaningful and supportive service for adults with DLD, filling a gap which we know exists. So our methodology was that we ran 3 focus groups with 6 young people with DLD whose ages ranged from 19 to 31 years, and all the participants attended a mainstream secondary enhanced provision. We also conducted interviews with 2 specialist teachers who had worked as teachers at the enhanced provision, the specialist speech and language therapist, and also a parent of one of the young people in our cohort. And then we carried out thematic analysis across the focus groups and interviews. So the groups and interviews were held at the Health, Wellbeing and Care Hub at the University of Essex. So this hub is a new centre designed to provide quality practice education placements for our AHP and nursing students who clinical supervision, deliver health and care services to the community, whilst working in partnership with our local ICSs and NHS England. And through its various services, the Hub aims to bring together a range of elements shown here for its service users. So these include communication support, negotiating live, promotion of health and wellbeing, and knowledge exchange. And all of these are applicable to our group of language disordered adults. The next two slides actually list the themes that were drawn from the thematic analysis following the interviews and focus groups, and they're shown here for you to read through, whilst I then hand over to Vicky, who'll go through each of the theme in more detail and talk about where this now leads us. Over to you, Vicky.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, Catherine. Hi, everyone. So what I'm going to do is just look a little bit in more depth at each of these themes and really share with you the voices of our participants, because as always, they say it so much better than we do. So with regards to poor identification of needs across the school years, our young person, one of our young people, spoke about the GP's comment to her when she asked for a referral as an adult as not appropriate at this age. The parent reporting the child's difficulties to the school throughout primary as well as to the GP. And the GP saying nothing was wrong. The Senko telling the parent she's a lovely little girl, she will catch up. And mom then looking at me and saying, Vicky, she's 19 years and still hasn't caught up. You're a middle-class parent, you're fussing. It makes me think about the session that Hannah gave yesterday. Specialist teacher spoke about severe speech gets picked up, ASD gets picked up. The ones were missed. Language, people with children with language difficulties, comprehension, they're bright enough to mask, they can read, could not understand, people thought they were rude. Another strong theme was the limited specialist support and the need for tailored specialist support. So our speech and language therapist reported no SLT services post 11 years, unless having an EHCP, only support for physical disability and speech disorder. Parents said language comprehension is a big problem, should have gone to a special school. She will have learned more life skills training. So really clear about the skills and knowledge that her child needed. Unhappiness at school came out loud and clear. Specialist teacher spoke about the access to the full curriculum being so traumatic. Parents had fought to get into the provision. The state we got them in, from mainstream that is, was terrible. Withdrawn, retreated, fearful, fear of failure. The children, the young people who we met clearly have a desire to communicate, but they were afraid to or not having the language to do so. This came through strong. So the SLT spoke about needing the vocabulary and the grammar. They have the ideas, but no ways of expressing them. The parents spoke about she can't talk when out with others, does not have the skills. Her confidence, she's scared to say the wrong thing, can't think what to say. Basic words are missing, keywords. She sees a movie, but then can't engage in conversation about the movie, can't remember it afterwards. But we really thought this was interesting when mom said she talks to her dog all the time in the bedroom when she's relaxed. Interesting idea about she can read, but not really understand what she reads. And the books, the level of content that she needs are not then the appropriate ideas and content. So books that are at her level are not about teenage girls' things like shopping and boys. Very strong theme of difficulties with socialization and feelings of isolation. So parents spoke about Odette being very sociable, but finding socialization very difficult, finding it hard to start a conversation. Quote, wants to do what she sees as a normal person does, go out to coffee, see a movie. Those basic things are things that this Odette, who's 21, cannot do. She's missing out socially, says mom. Needs are different. Odette only had one friend throughout school. Girl took advantage, asked her to buy things. And then she spoke about another more recent example of a boy at college asking her to do something that was inappropriate. Mom having to check her phone, limit social media. And interesting, this young lady said to Mom, "Can you look at my phone? I don't think I'm supposed to do this." So she had some level of awareness, but keep in mind, this is a 21-year-old young lady. Specialist teacher spoke about the children getting lost, our kids getting into terrible trouble. And many of us on this call will appreciate this and will have had similar experiences. The whole area of friendships, making friendships, difficult, unequal, different expectations. So SLT spoke about unequal friendships, that our young people are more vulnerable, the idea of pity friendships, controlling, coercive relationships, scapegoating. This idea of social butterfly, which the parent picked up, moving from one friendship group to another because they're looking for people like them, people who fit them. This need for greater independence, but vulnerable. So parents said, well, she will never drive. She can't get through the theory tests. Could not find driving instructor for kids with special needs. And one of the young people in the focus group shared how his theory test lapsed, took him ages to get it, but it lapsed due to the delays in learning to drive. Cooking, basic skills, doesn't have nice skills, boiling water, following instructions, safety. Couldn't trust her to make a meal. How can she be independent, says Mom, walking through park, more vulnerable, did not understand awareness of danger, don't want to scare her. She craves independence, but is aware of not being able to have it. Then this really strong idea of the desire to meet and spend time with people who are like me. Fearful of what to say, they need a safe space, said our speech and language therapist. The parent grouping all disabilities together. So we go places and they put everybody with SEND together. It just isn't okay. Young person, friendship, social groups, went to many groups, never settled, then went towards people like me, my people. Young person, knowing there are people like us. And the specialist teacher, and I wanted to put this in because I think it's really interesting, she arranges for everybody who came to the school to meet once a term. And originally they met in a pub, but she found sitting in a pub was too difficult because you were forced to make conversation. There was nothing else to do. So now instead of that, they go bowling. Great for our kids, said the specialist teacher. Socializing, noisy, it's busy. They can talk, but they can also do other things. And that's what we're looking for, a safe space. A lot about masking, hiding difficulties. So Jeremy using humor, and he's still a clown, school, college, work. Mark, very charming, always well-dressed, smart. And Odette, just trying to please everyone. Smiley, happy, all the time, says yes all the time. Real challenges in employment, challenges in finding the right fit, vocational course, not always appropriate. Specialist teacher said once they get the job, they need someone in the company, someone who looks out for them. They do need extra, but once they are there, they are hardworking and loyal. They just need to be carefully matched to the right job. And then this fearful of future. Mom said, really worried about what will happen if me and my husband are no longer here. We've made wills, put money in trust for her, son as a trustee. So a real anxiety in both the parents we spoke to, but also in the speech and language therapists. So if we look at an integration of findings and how we then are co-producing a framework of services, and I should just say, we're actually still involved. The study is continuing and we're still including more and more adults with DLD who are attending the Health, Wellbeing and Care Hub. The themes we found were generally consistent with those identified by the Boys et al. Study. So perspectives on diagnosis, school struggles, DLD across the lifespan, and a sense of belonging. But we also really heard loud and clear, very clearly, as the use of strategies for long-term coping and compensation. These young people were very clear about what they need. I went to college to build up my life skills, to build my CV. They know what they need. We just need to listen and give them the space to tell us. They want relevant and practical support. For example, help preparing for the theory test, driving test, making dinner. Need for further formal assessments was not supported at all by our participants. However, I do want to say that the group we had were already an already identified group, and that might have swayed those results. So in terms of the co-production, there were lots of commonalities. There was commonalities of difficulties across the young people. Working online was hard. Texting, interestingly, voice note, they agreed was easier. Form filling, navigating benefit systems, PIP, theory driving test, following automated voice messages. Well, I think we could all agree with that. Booking appointments. So real commonality of difficulties. And commonality of timing, transition periods, new activities, new experiences, unexpected challenges and events. So we should be able to prepare and to help support at these clear areas of difficulty. And then commonalities of need. So importance of identity, looking for people like them, looking to belong, being part of a community, part of a support system with mutual benefits, pretty much what all of us are asking for. So lots of commonalities, but, and this is a big but, there is absolutely a need for support to take into account individual differences and to be individualized and tailored to the young person. And you see this so clearly when you're in a group of young people in the hub like we are, and we're asking them to co-produce a service. Support we offer must consider and take into account cognitive and language abilities, preferences, personalities, likes and dislikes, the resilience of the young people. Just like all of us, some of us are more resilient at some times and less at other times. Family and friend support, it's huge. Some came with such a lot of support, some just don't have people around them. And wider community support. And of course, employment. What support they're getting in their employment? Are they employed? What they're doing? A lot of our young people were very anxious about not having employment and not being able to find the appropriate jobs. So differentiation is really key. Really, really important for person to be the center of the provision. I know that I'm talking to an audience who absolutely supports that. I want to just mention, this is a lovely quote from the specialist teacher who said, need to acknowledge these adults want to be part of society. They want to do well. They want to be successful, but it's hard. Need someone to be their advocate. Now, I don't think any one of us who's listening to this would have thought otherwise, but they absolutely need support to do this. So I'm really going to challenge us all to make sure that we are their advocates, but that it's their voice and it's their decision about what they want to work with. And if it's really the main message that Catherine, Seville and I want to give is that we were astounded by her. It's not about any of what we wanted. They were very clear about the service they want and the service they need. And we absolutely can give them that. So let's advocate for them. And it's absolutely about their needs and how they see the service developing. And we're very privileged to be able to offer that in the Health, Wellbeing and Care Hub. So thank you for your time. I did rush this because I was so scared of the 17 minutes and I didn't want my lovely Lucy not to have her 17 minutes. But please get in touch. Catherine, myself, Seville would love to talk to you. And we'd love you to visit the Health, Wellbeing and Care Hub at the University of Essex. So do come by because we have this clinic, but we have lots of other exciting things. But I'm going to end there and thank everybody for listening. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Vicky and Catherine. That was just fascinating to hear from those young adults with DLD to get that feedback, to hear about your focus on co-production. I know there's been sessions today where we've been told that to champion speech and language therapy as well, co-production is so central to that. I think also so many themes that resonate across yours and Ben's presentation prior to that. And very much we need to advocate for the people that we're here to serve. I'm going to move on in the spirit of trying to move quickly to our third presentation in this intervention design session now. So I'm going to hand over to Lucy, who's going to tell you about her use of the TIDIA framework for intervention planning and reporting.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Amit, for the opportunity to present in this session on intervention design. I'm going to take a slightly different approach to the previous two speakers. This isn't about a particular project, but this I'm reporting on some work that was done as part of one of the working groups from the collaboration of aphasia trialists. And what we were doing is we were using an already existing checklist for intervention reporting, so a checklist about what you should include when you're talking about a new intervention design, and how we're trying to adapt it specifically for aphasia intervention reporting. Okay, trying to find a way to move the slides there. Lovely. So this is the team who were in the working group. You can see we're an international team from across Europe and Australia and America. So what's the issue here, and why were we doing this? So as you all know, interventions for aphasia are complex, as they are for most speech and language therapy interventions. They're designed for a heterogeneous population, and they're delivered across a wide range of settings. So reporting needs to be detailed enough to allow some really key things that help us move on our intervention research. So one of them is replication. There needs to be enough detail there for somebody else to replicate your study. And importantly, we need to be able to build on each other's rehabilitation research. So we need it there for development. And then clinicians need the detail in our intervention reporting so that they can start to implement the evidence-based interventions that they see written up. And there's currently a lack of specificity and detail in the existing evidence base, pretty much across speech and language therapy, but very definitely in aphasia rehabilitation research. So what we set out to do was to use this already existing checklist, which is called the Template of Intervention Description and I can't see that, you're hidden behind it. And replication, yes, the TIDIA checklist. We want to make it specific to aphasia. So happily, that means our project is called TIDIA Aphasia, which is a very nice project title. And what we're trying to do is improve the quality of reporting and so that we can help improve replicability and implementation. So the existing checklist is intended for any health or applied health intervention that has been reported in a research study. So it's a really good foundation for what we want to do. But what we're finding when we use the TIDIA and when we use the TIDIA to review, so for example, in systematic reviews, it's not meaning that the evidence base is reported in enough detail. So there's something about the checklist which is helpful, but it's not going far enough to help researchers write up their rehabilitation. So the existing checklist has 12 items, and it's adapted and expanded from the consort and spirit recommendations. This is what the original checklist looks like. So it specifies what you should have there. So you can see it's useful to us as researchers to remind us what we should be including in our intervention reporting, but it's also useful to people who are planning a new intervention in the first place. So, if you want to plan a new intervention, and you're thinking about how you might write it up or how you might make sure you've got all of those important sections, you can use the checklist for that as well. And then if we look at the why, what, and how, it'll be immediately obvious that those are the areas of intervention reporting that clinicians are going to be most interested in. This is where you need to include the detail so that clinicians can use it in their everyday practice. So Ben, for example, talked about active ingredients and mechanisms of change, and this is where this kind of information is really, really important, and it doesn't really tell you there how much detail to go into. The second page of the checklist looks like this. So there are only 12 items in total. And you'll see again, there's another key part here, which researchers and clinicians are getting increasingly interested in. So how much, what's the dosage, etc. So we really wanted to push for people to pay attention to this kind of detail in their reporting. So this checklist exists, and the authors say that it should be used by authors of research. It should be used by reviewers who are reviewing the publication of intervention research, and it should be used by editors of journals so that everybody is reporting to the same standards. So at the moment, the Physiology journal does advocate for the use of Tidia for their authors and for their reviewers. And so what we would want is for our updated checklist to be endorsed in this way as well. So what did we set out to do to adapt that existing checklist to make it relevant and specific to aphasia intervention reporting? Make it useful as a checklist for when you're planning a new aphasia intervention design. And key to this is we wanted to illustrate it with really good reporting practice from existing research that's out there, so that we could say, there is some really good stuff. When you're thinking about reporting, please use these as your model. And the ultimate aim then is to facilitate clinician engagement with the evidence base, because all too often you hear clinicians say, I know my practice ought to be evidence-based, but journal articles don't help me to do this. I go there, I see something very exciting and new, but there's either no detail at all about how I might implement it, or not enough, or I'm really not clear whether it's ready to be implemented or not. So I'll tell you about the 3 stages in the project. So we developed this adapted version of the Tidia. We did some consensus among researchers who are members of the collaboration of aphasia trialists. And at the moment, we're in the final purple circle there, finalizing before we submit the paper. So in development, we sat as a group, so that big group you saw at the beginning of the talk, to talk about which items we think needed adapting or expanding and how, and whether we needed to add any new items. And we decided we didn't. We could work within the existing framework and just expand what was there. So no checklist items were added or removed. We did do something a bit sneaky, though. We added a sub-item. So in the original Tidia, it does say who, which is, who should deliver this treatment. But we wanted to add a sub-item there for whom as well, because in aphasia research in particular, candidacy for treatment's really important. Is this for everybody with aphasia? Is it just for non-fluent speakers, etc.? But for the existing 12 items, what we did do throughout is add extra detail, extra guidance, extra specificity with examples from published papers. And the approach we took was to add some questioning. So, kind of, this is what you should report here. Have you done this? Have you thought about that? And what about this? This was the approach we took throughout. So just to remind you, the original, and I'll talk first about the why items. So originally is just this very short sentence: describe any rationale, theory, or goal of the treatment. We expanded it to this because there's something important about the rationale in underpinning aphasia treatment and other treatments in speech and language therapy, where clinicians and researchers really do need to understand the background to the development of the treatment. So we're kind of prompting for more. We want the aim and the rationale. We want to know, is it going to target something specific? And can you say exactly what that is? Is it word finding or is it participation? So that we can be really clear what the targets are. Specified goals and whether it's embedded in a particular theoretical framework. The question that the study's asking, why and for whom it's important. Anything about the existing evidence base. And people in our working group thought it's also important to talk about active ingredients here as well. And I'll say a bit more about that later. So the second example I'll show you, I won't go through them all, is what we said for what. So for materials in particular, clinicians often want to know what the materials were for the treatment and where can I get hold of them. So we expanded this, describe them in as much detail as possible, whether they're physical or digital or informational. Include the materials if you can. Include materials for pre-practice and assessment, and any other reference or technological manuals. So really go big here. Give as much information as you can about what materials are needed so that clinicians can use this straight away. And we also, because we were this international group, are people in the group who wanted information about whether this was published in other languages, and if not, something about the linguistic variables. So if you were going to translate it or adapt it for another language, what you would have to think about. And, you know, say very clearly, if it's not in the paper, where can you find this material? So we then sent this around to a wider group, 18 other researchers and clinicians, just to see whether they agreed with us, and we had a range of different experience there. Overall, they agreed with the big question: we do need a specific checklist for aphasia. And then they gave us some lovely feedback on what we were suggesting should be put into the checklist. So for this one, they said, you know, some positive things: really good, really important. It's really important to expand here. And then they made some suggestions. So they said perhaps mechanism of change shouldn't be here. It is important, but maybe it shouldn't be under the why, maybe it should be under the how section. So they gave us some really good pointers. For the what we were suggesting for the expansion of the what, they said, yeah, this is great, really important to share materials, but, and then they started to give us some caveats for why materials aren't always there. Sometimes they're copyrighted, and if so, that's okay, but we should just say so. We should say if there are any linguistic variables that influence any decisions regarding the selection of materials. And we should also say that you must share materials, but only when practical to do so. So we had a further discussion about this in the group. Sorry, I'm just going to skip forward. And this is the reason why when you're designing a complex intervention, like a speech and language therapy, behavioral intervention, you need to move through these different phases in order to produce something that's really solid. So there's a kind of theoretical and modelling stage, then there's an exploratory stage, and only then do you get to the definitive trial. So that's the original model on the left of your screen. The updated version says you talk about feasibility and piloting and proof of concept first, and then you do your full-scale evaluation. And a lot of the interventions that we publish in journals are at the proof of concept stage or at the feasibility stage. So there might be a good reason why authors can't share materials at that stage. They might need to hold on to them so that they can then go to the full trial and not contaminate the control arm of their full trial. So it's okay if you can't share your materials because you're at an early stage of intervention design, but you must say so in your paper, and you must say why, and you must say the plan is for us to trial this properly later, and then the materials will be available. Okay, just to go back one more slide. Yeah, sorry, I have covered both of those. Just keeping my eye on the time. We also thought we need to make some explicit connections with other checklists, because there are a lot of checklists that you have to bear in mind when you are reporting intervention. So there's the Describe framework, which again is about aphasia and comes from the collaboration of aphasia trialists, and that's about who the intervention is for. There's the CORIC guidelines, which is about who is providing the intervention, and there are various other guidelines. We also talked about links to research that's going on in terms of dosage, which is the Hayward et al. And Harvey et al. References there, and other frameworks that help us talk more about why we're doing the intervention in this way and what we need to do. So the ITSS comes up there, and that's where they talk about mechanisms of action. So we are in the final stage. We've responded to the feedback that we got from our consensus groups. We're just finalising the examples of good reporting practice that we want to include in the paper. Happily, new things keep coming up. So every time we think we've got our candidate examples of good practice, something new comes up that we want to include, but we're going to draw a line some point very soon, end of this month. And then what we want to do is we want to publish a paper about this project process in aphasiology, hopefully, and it will have this tidier aphasia adaptation to the framework as an appendix. And then we hope to get that appendix used by journal reviewers and journal authors as an established practice. Thank you, Amit. I am finishing there.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Brilliant timing and really interesting to take that deeper dive into intervention design after hearing those two other presentations about interventions themselves. I've certainly learned so much across these different clinical areas and across these different elements of interventions in our area. So thank you so much to all of you presenters for presenting that fascinating work for us. Also, thanks to attendees. I've seen questions are coming in. Please do continue those coming in, because hopefully presenters will be able to see them and report and respond to any specific questions after the session is finished. Just time for me to wrap up. Let you know there is 5 minutes only until the next set of parallel sessions take place. But I look forward to those next set of sessions and hopefully to continuing to enjoy the rest of this conference day. Thanks so much, everyone. Goodbye.